Hey, welcome everybody. Listen, we have a very exciting time with this episode of Hope for Our Times, Sunday Night Live, wherever you are in the world. This is live, 4 o'clock here on the West Coast. And I can't wait. I'm going to introduce my guest in just a minute, but let me read a couple of things. We're going to be looking at prophecies that are going to take place during the middle of the tribulation period. And some people wonder, why do you even talk about those things? I'll give you a hint. Because Jesus said to watch and be ready, and when you see these things begin to take place, look up, for your redemption draws near. But with that, consider these words from Damon Duck, who wrote on October 4th, 2020, it was reported that the European Central Bank will begin consultations on October 12th. That is tomorrow, on the release of a digital currency. ECB officials said a move toward a digital currency will complement cash, but not replace it. Then he said, many prophecy teachers believe the world will go to a digital currency to facilitate the tracking of all buying and selling during the tribulation period. Folks, I think this is remarkable when we look at Bible prophecy and the speed that everything is developing. And then along those lines, check this out. Here's an email that I received just today. This email came from David from New Jersey. He said, how convinced are you, he's asking me, how convinced are you that one of the major underlying reasons for the COVID virus is to move the world to a one world currency? I have a company that is in mobile fintech, I'm not sure if I pronounced that correct, and I am seeing a lot of pressure on countries to release a digital dollar native to their country. And then he goes on, and I went back and forth with him, and he said that by 2021, midpoint of 2021, you can expect that we're going to have a digital currency that's developed here in the United States. And then we went back and forth on a few other things. With this, I would like you to welcome my guest with you to the program today, Bill Salus. Bill, thank you for being here. We're going to have quite an interesting conversation today, and this is, I think it's exciting when we look at Bible prophecy. But before we begin, because some people, they look at this and they say it's too scary, I don't want to pay attention. Somebody wrote this to me recently, taking a quote from Charles Dickens. We live in the best of times, we live in the worst of times, but we know how it ends, don't we? God wins. And that's where we keep our eyes fixed on the finish line, but there's a whole lot of events that are going to take place between now and when Jesus returns. One of those things is the rapture is going to take place, but then after the rapture, there's events that are going to take place. We're going to be talking about these things. It looks like we're going to get quite a bit into cryptocurrencies and this type of thing on this program. So you ready?
I am, Tom. Looking forward to it.
All right. So you have various books that are out. We can talk about some of those things. In fact, I want to bring up this current book. Let me go to this first. You have the Now Prophecies. You have the Next Prophecies. You have the Last Prophecies. You have a lot of different prophetic books here. And then you have this. This is your latest book, The Final Prophecies. And we're going to be getting into these areas of the final prophecies, right?
Yes.
Okay. So with that, you have developed the timeline. Do you want to start with the timeline, or do you want to start with what is cryptocurrency or what is blockchain? Where do you want to start?
Well, why don't we start with the timeline?
Okay.
First of all, that is a very good point the emailer said, that as we see the COVID-19 come, we're seeing that cash is starting to no longer be king. It's very concerning. We're going to read some headlines to your viewers tonight about cash is dying on the vine, et cetera. So it's accelerating toward what I would also agree with you guys on is this global order and a cashless economy with the technologies available today, especially digital. And I think as you and I have talked many times, we're living deep on the end times line. This is telling us just how deep we are on the end times line. And we're going to talk, I think, about going to the middle of the tribulation. Let's talk about how critically important that is, how come so many prophecies are power packed into that period of time, because from there you get into the cashless economy. The mark of the beast comes out of that, and then we go into the second half of the tribulation. So the book is called Final Prophecies, the prophecies in the last 3.5 years of the tribulation. And of course that includes the midpoint prophecies, and there's almost a dozen prophecies right in the middle happening in a matter of a few days to a couple months, probably at the most period of time, compacted in there, and they are powerful prophecies. So we should maybe go through some of those.
I would like to. In fact, Chris or Gabe, if you could pull up for our viewers the timeline slide so everybody can see what it is we're talking about. If you look on the screen, so this is what people are seeing, Bill. Prophecies at the midpoint of the tribulation. These are all of them that you have listed. 10 kings desolate the harlot. Satan loses the war in heaven. Satan and the fallen angels are cast to earth. Death and resurrection of Antichrist. Death, resurrection, and ascension of the two witnesses. Annulment of the false covenant. Abomination of desolation. There's a lot here. Desecration of the third temple. Antichrist declares and shows himself as God. Antichrist campaign of Jewish genocide begins. Emergence of the false prophet. 666 image and mark of the beast. This is at the midpoint of the tribulation. This is a lot. This is mainly Revelation chapter 11, chapter 12, and chapter 13. And in this also falls cryptocurrency and what you believe is cryptocurrency and blockchain. I happen to believe that also as we look at things developing, but I don't understand it that well. And I'm guessing a lot of our viewers don't understand it that well. So this is exciting. Let's roll.
Okay, yeah. We've been sitting here since the last Bible prophecy in 1948, the rebirth of the nation of Israel, 71, 70, almost 72 years now. What we just laid up on your screen are prophecies are going to happen, like I said, in just a few weeks to a month span of time. So when Bible prophecies start to happen, they're going to start happening real quickly and compactedly at this point in time.
Okay, so, can you hold on 1 second?
Yeah.
Okay, just for our viewers to clarify, you said will start happening within a few weeks to a month's period of time. This doesn't mean a few weeks from now. You're talking about once the events of the last days start to unfold. They're going to start happening rapidly. Listen, I believe like you do, the rapture is going to happen first, and then the tribulation will begin after that. So Bill's not saying in a few weeks these events will start.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. When these events in the middle of the tribulation happen, they will happen within a couple weeks to a couple months. We've made that point. So that's a good point to put forward. Now, with respects to, we also want to make sure that some people might be asking this question, Tom, well, wait, you're talking about the rapture. I believe in a pre-trib rapture. That means I won't be here for the middle of the tribulation. That's a good point.
Okay.
That's a very good point. But the thing is, you have people who you love that don't know Jesus right now, and if we're as close to the rapture as we think we are, could happen at any given moment. People who are going to, in your sphere of influence, in your family, they're going to be left behind, and they're going to go through the things we listed there, and those were just a handful of the things on the timeline. There's seal judgments, there's trumpet judgments, there's deaths, there's demonic invasions, etc., wars and famines, etc.
Right.
So we're trying to say that you should care, even though you won't be here, someone you love will be here, and you can use what we're going to show you tonight to evangelize to those people.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I get asked that question a lot. Why waste your time teaching Bible prophecy if you're a pre-trib rapture person? What difference does it make? We're going to be out of here. In fact, it's probably one of the questions I get asked more from people who have gone to church but aren't interested in Bible prophecy. But what they don't understand is, listen, what they're not connecting with is just everything that you just said. You're sharing Christ with your family members. You're sharing Christ with your friends. These events that are going to take place are all warning signs that they can see, my knucklehead brother or friend, Bill Salus, was right. Or that guy, Tom, he was correct in saying these things, because they tell us. And these will be used as opportunities during the tribulation period for people to come to Christ that aren't coming to him yet. And that's the way I see that.
Right, and when we leave this program, time permitting, we are going to give the viewers a good education on the developments of cryptocurrency, how it's happening so fast, which tells us if that's the technology that the Antichrist will embrace to facilitate his global economy, it's here, right? So that tells us this time is rapidly approaching. So you can start to learn more about these types of things, and you can use them as a witnessing tool to talk about what's coming, a cashless economy, a global order, this sort of thing. So we're going to get to that. The middle of the tribulation, we've gone through the first half of the tribulation. There's been seal judgments. There's been trumpet judgments. There's been tormenting of demonic invasion, tormenting in the fifth trumpet judgment, 5 months of people who don't have the seal of God. There's a 200 million man army in the sixth trumpet judgment that kills a third of mankind. This is, we haven't even gotten to the middle of the tribulation yet. Now we get to the middle of the tribulation, and this is where things really heat up. There's a war in heaven between Michael the archangel and Satan. You pick that up in Revelation chapter 12. And Satan is accusing the brethren day and night before the Lord, who have overcome him with their testimony and their faith in God, the blood of the Lamb. And so the brethren he's accusing at this point, I point out in the book, are not church saints or Old Testament saints. They're the actual people going through the tribulation period. They're the people who are not believing in his deception, his lie, and they're become God's rebuttal. How come not everyone's falling into your lie, this sort of thing. So he's accusing these brethren day and night. At some point, that's going nowhere. It's falling on deaf ears. The angels who are never left their proper habitation, the good angels, are listening to this more than likely. I'm going to take a little liberties talking about how I think these things unfold. Okay. Author liberties, we'll say. But ultimately, it's not working, so Satan has to kick into plan B, which is he's now going to come try to kill all the Jews, which has always been his plan. But he's got a twofold strategy. He's going to want to kill the Jews. One, if he can kill all the Jews, and before I say that, just remember, Michael is the prince of the Jews. That's why I think the war happens between Michael and him. Now, Michael could be the chief commander in heaven anyways, but he's definitely the prince of the Jews. Now, if Satan is going to try to kill the Jews, he's got to go through Michael, and I think you have this war. Now, Satan loses. He gets cast down to the earth, and he begins persecuting the Jews, which is one of the things in the middle of the tribulation.
Okay, that's Revelation chapter 12, right?
Yep.
And then also, that is, when I look at that, would be Matthew chapter 24, when Jesus warns, when you see the abomination of desolation, as Daniel the prophet spoke of, 24 verse 15, and then Jesus warns those who are in Judea, flee, woe to those who are pregnant and nursing, that your flight might not be on the Sabbath. Is that the same event that you're talking about?
Yeah, okay. In a sequence of events, I believe we get there after he comes down to heaven. There's a couple of things that goes on. The Antichrist has died. We'll talk about the resurrection of the Antichrist. That's in the middle of tribulation. We'll talk about his trip to Jerusalem. I believe I have a kind of a fun with it. I call it a 4-day trip to Jerusalem. But when he comes down, he's cast down to the earth, like you say in Matthew 24. Jesus is warning the Jews, especially in Judea, to flee, because that's when Satan is going to have the Antichrist commit a final genocidal campaign of the Jews. And it says in Zechariah 13:8, 2/3 of these Jews will be cut off in the land. So it's going to be worse than the time of Hitler. But the twofold strategy, Tom, is this. If he kills the Jews, he can accomplish two birds with one stone. He can prove that God's a promise breaker, and it has character flaws, because he promised Abraham that he would have descendants forever. That's the chosen people, Genesis 15 and elsewhere, and a land for them, a promised land. If he can kill all the Jews, he shows that God has got a character flaw. He doesn't keep his promises. Two, if he can kill all the Jews, there'll be no Jews to fulfill the mandate of the second coming of Jesus. So Matthew 23 verses 39, he tells the nation of Israel, after rebuking the leaders at the time, he says, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. If there are no Jews left to say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, the Savior is stranded in heaven. So that's why you see the persecution, in my estimation. It's a twofold campaign to kill the Jews. Yeah.
I would agree wholeheartedly with that. It's a spiritual reason why there is anti-Semitism in this world, and Satan's attempt to eliminate the Jewish people. I want to ask you a question before we move on, because you brought up deception. Okay, so with this question that came in, what this individual asked me about was specifically the individual, David from New Jersey, is coronavirus one, let me get back to it. I want to ask exactly what he said. How convinced are you that one of the major underlying reasons for the coronavirus is to move the world to a one world currency? Now, here's my answer on this, and then I want you to answer. I don't think the reason for coronavirus is to move the world to one world currency. However, I think coronavirus is being used as a tool to move the world that direction. I think coronavirus is real. I don't think the numbers are anywhere near as high as we're told. Certainly, they're not nearly as high as was projected and all the fears that were brought upon everybody. In fact, WHO released some statement today, apparently, that they are retracting or something like that. I wish I had the article with me. They're saying, look, it was someone within the World Health Organization, maybe you saw a bill that said, look, these lockdowns are creating a much bigger problem for especially those who are already poverty-stricken than before, and the disaster that's coming from the lockdowns is far worse than anything that's happened from the actual coronavirus. Did you see that article?
I did not see the article, but I concur with what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't believe this was sort of created to facilitate a one world order, but it is certainly being used to do that. Now, we talk about deception, 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 7 through 12. When Satan is no longer restrained, which most of us would say at the time of the rapture, his restraint is removed, he is going to go forward with deception with all power, signs, and lying wonders. So the COVID-19 thing is not necessarily fitting into that sort of mold. First of all, the church is still here. The restraint is still upon Satan. But I do agree with you. This is facilitating a move toward digital currencies, blockchain technologies, and I think that's the tool that the Antichrist will use for his cashless economy.
With that, I can pull up this article. I feel like I need to, so give me just a second here. Here's what it said, because just make sure I quoted this right. Coronavirus, this is news.com.au, WHO World Health Organization backflips on virus stance by condemning lockdowns, and then it went on to talk about what I mentioned with poverty-stricken. But we're going into cryptocurrency. We are going towards a cashless society. In everything I'm reading, man, it is happening rapidly. Okay, so now we had all those different events that are going to happen midpoint of the tribulation. I'm going to have you take myself and our viewers, help us go through this. We can pull up the slides as you need them on what is blockchain, what is cryptocurrency, explain some things. I hope you don't mind me stopping you with some questions. I know we have a lot of different news articles too that are here to help us all grasp what's really going on, how quickly. So you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now let me make this comment as we get into it. It sounds like we're going to move head on right into the cryptocurrencies and the blockchain.
Okay.
Which we could.
No,
I was saying we could do that after we do
Let's do the other.
the sequence of events. It
Let's
doesn't
go through
matter to me.
No, go through the sequence of events.
So Satan's cast down to the earth, and a third of his angels are cast down, and they're no longer able to go back and forth, to and fro between earth and heaven. They're cast out. And it says, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because Satan is cast out, and he knows his time is short. So he's going to immediately start moving with his last campaign in this 3.5 years that's left. And first thing he's going to do, he's got a problem because his point man, the serpent's seed, has received a mortal head wound, found in Revelation 13. Somehow he's managed to be killed, right? And so Satan resurrects him, and several times it talks about this in Revelation 13. Now, some people would say, well, it's a counterfeit resurrection. Whatever it may be, I personally think it looks like a real resurrection. It may be a DNA alteration, I don't know. But the fact of the matter is the world thinks it's a real resurrection because it says they start to worship and follow the beast. Now, he's coming alive to the forum. He's come out of the bottomless pit. Now, meanwhile, I think what has happened by this point in time is the harlot, the global world religion, which was thriving in the first half of the tribulation, gets desolated by the 10 kings, and it's no longer what it was. It's fleeing, whatever the case may be. Revelation 17:16. So all of a sudden, one aspect of worship is out of the way, because remember, the Antichrist is now going to show himself as God. He's going to exalt himself as God. Now, he's got Judaism as a problem, right? That's a competing religion. Christians are already being killed, true Christianity, by the harlot. She's drunk with the blood of the saints and the martyrs of Jesus. Now she's out of the way, so he'll start killing them. We're told he actually beheads Christians who don't take his mark in Revelation 20, verse 4. But he comes down on the scene now, and he's resurrected. Now he's got the first thing he's going to do is he's going to go to Jerusalem, because he's got these two witnesses that have been there in the first half of the tribulation, causing plagues and torment, and they're tormenting all the people on the earth. This is in Revelation chapter 11. And at the time they're doing the plagues, the trumpet judgments have also been happening.
So our viewers are watching, because you just said a whole lot in a very short time. So I'm able to track with you. I want to make sure everybody else is able to track with you also. I'm not going to reiterate everything, but when you get to the two witnesses, so the two witnesses are preaching for the entire first half of the tribulation period.
Yes.
Okay, so there's judgments that are coming from them. There's judgments that are also coming from God at the same time in heaven. So you have the different sets of judgments. You have the seal judgments that are taking place, the trumpet judgments, the two witnesses who are also proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Correct.
So all of that is taking place in the first half of the tribulation, and you're only a couple of things into what takes place before the cryptocurrency.
Right. I mean, the cryptocurrency is a
Or
few
the mark of the beast for those who
a month
disagree
later,
with
right?
that
I mean,
part,
it's going to happen real quick. So the two witnesses are tormenting mankind, it says, okay? And so bad that the people have been trying to kill them, but it says they can't be killed, and people who try to harm them will actually be harmed in retaliation by these. Now, the world at large does not necessarily know that God is orchestrating trumpet judgments. And some of those trumpet judgments are not too far away from what the powers that the two witnesses have. So from my perspective, it's highly likely that mankind thinks the two witnesses are causing the judgments, and it says that they are tormenting mankind. So much so that when the Antichrist goes to Jerusalem, and I have fun with it, I say he does a 4-day trip to Jerusalem. Day one, and I'm going to say for giggles' sake, I'm going to say it's a Friday. Okay, I have no idea, and it may not even be 4 days, it may be longer, it may be shorter. But he goes in there, and the first thing he does, gets out of Ben Gurion Airport in his motorcade, and they go over to where these two witnesses are, and he kills them. Says he kills the two witnesses, and they lie dead in the streets for 3.5 days, and the world is rejoicing. They're giving away gifts. It's merriment because they, for all intents and purposes, they probably think the plagues have stopped. You know, maybe the Antichrist will even be so bold as to say, "Hey, I just stopped the plagues." Yeah. Little do they know, the worst plagues are just around the corner in the bowl judgments.
Yeah.
So then the Antichrist, in my estimation, he goes to his hotel room. He turns on the TV. It's Friday night. He couldn't be happier. The world's already following him, marveling from his resurrection. Now, it says he goes there after he comes out of the bottomless pit and kills them. So we know what happens after this counterfeit resurrection. He's in his hotel room. He couldn't be happier. The cameras are on these two witnesses in the street. The world's giving away gifts. Now that's day one. Day two, I'm going to say it's on the Sabbath. He's got to go into the temple now. He's got to stop the sacrifices and offerings that are taking place as per Daniel 9:27. And when he does that, he also annuls the false covenant in Isaiah 28 verses 18. So that he kills two birds with one stone. Then he's going to desecrate the temple. And he's going to set up his abomination of desolation in the holy place, which is, we go back to what Jesus, you said about Jesus. We'll talk about that in a minute. So some people think the abomination of desolation is actually the image of the beast. And if it is, that means the false prophet's on the scene by this time, because it's a false prophet, we're told in Revelation 13, who says, "Let us make an image to the beast," and he causes the beast, he gives it breath, causes it to speak, and kill all those who will not worship the beast. So the false prophet comes into this mix at some point. In my scenario, I put him shortly after day two here. Now day two, he's going to go, he's still in the temple, he stopped the sacrifices and offerings, he's done the abomination of desolation, he's desecrated the temple. Now he's going to exalt himself above all that's called God and have no regard for the God of his fathers. And he's going to, 2 Thessalonians 2 says he shows himself as God. And it looks like from the Greek word, he's actually doing like a miracle or demonstrating, not just boasting I'm God, but actually doing something to prove that. Now, that's the end of day two. We're going to call that the Sabbath. Now, let's go back to you for a minute and tell me why the Sabbath would be the worst time for this to happen according to Jesus. What did Jesus say in Matthew 24, verse 15?
Pray that your flight is not on the Sabbath.
Right.
You know, the reality of it is, Bill, you've been to Israel, I've been to Israel. When it's Shabbat, when it's Sabbath, pretty much everything shuts down.
Right.
Very few people are going anywhere except for those who are breaking the Sabbath laws. But you go to the hotels there in Jerusalem on Sabbath, and you can't even get checked into your hotel room. I know, because that has happened to me not once, twice, but 3 different times. Do not try to check into a hotel in Israel on the Sabbath, or you're going to be sitting in the lobby for the night. And so that's why.
Right, and trying to flee when public transportation, and a lot of Israelis use public transportation on a Sabbath, the transportation shut down. He says also pray that your flight is not in the winter, because the wadis can overflow and flood. Pray that you're not nursing babies. Of course, you don't want to be fleeing with a baby. But what Matthew 24, 15 and 16 says is that Jesus says, when you see the abomination of desolation, as spoken by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, this is why we might put the image of the beast in the Holy of Holies. That might be what he's alluding to. He says, let him who reads this understand, which I want to talk about that in a minute. But then he says, let those in Judea flee. Okay? In other words, because that's when the persecution of the Jews are going to happen. He's going to get rid of Judaism and the Jewish people for the reasons we talked about earlier. Now, it says, him who reads this, let him understand. Now, we're not reading it. We're quoting it, but we want you to know that it says anyone who reads it has to understand. That means you too. Now, the Jews who are fleeing, they need to understand it because they've got to flee. And he's warning them to flee out of Judea. But anybody that's hearing it, he's talking, they need to understand it. You and I need to understand it because we teach it. But I'm looking in the camera right here. He's even talking to you. And some of you may say, well, I like the Bible, but I don't necessarily like Bible prophecy. But he does not give you an opt-out clause here. He says you must understand what he's saying, at least specifically on this particular prophecy. And I like to use that to let people know that now. So day 2, he's gone back to his hotel room. He's done all those things. And I believe the TV cameras have followed him into the temple. He's done all those things. The 2 witnesses are still down on the streets. The cameras are on them. The world's rejoicing, giving gifts. He's shown himself as God. He couldn't be happier. Day 3 comes along. He gets a phone call from 3 of the 10 kings. Now, 3 of these 10 kings are actually at some point had to be subdued, we're told in Daniel chapter 7. Now, up to this point, the 10 kings have all been of one accord. They agreed to give their kingdoms to the beast. They all agreed they should desolate the harlot. But all of a sudden, 3 of them all of a sudden now have a problem. Now, I'm just saying that he gets a phone call. He's had his bags packed, he gets a phone call, right? He's got a problem with 3 kings who said, look, we were good with you all the way, but now you tell us we got to worship you as God, we got a problem with that. Now, I don't know, folks, if that's why he has to subdue him.
Yeah.
But that's about the only thing I can think of why everything changes for that.
Yeah. I do want to say this, and you mentioned it early on, that you're going to take a couple of liberties presenting the scenario. What you're really laying out is we know the facts based on the Bible of the events that will actually take place. So just as a reminder, what Bill is laying out is a possible scenario for how all of the events will go down. You said something when you began, Antichrist flying into Ben Gurion Airport and then going over to Jerusalem. I never thought about that, but that's probably how he probably will be coming into Ben Gurion Airport, which I've been to many a times. When you start looking at the reality of it, this is what we read what the Bible says, but you're trying to help people just to imagine the reality of it. It is going to go down. We don't know the exact time. We don't know the exact places, but I think you're putting out something that's definitely intriguing based upon what the Bible says.
And I have this in the book, and the book has a DVD coming out shortly. Okay. And for those of you that may have tuned in late, that was important Tom said what he said, because as an author, I do take some liberties. I'm running out a scenario that may not be exactly how it lays out, but it is scripturally supported. Now, Dave, he's fussing about what is he going to do about these 3 kings. We're told he ultimately has to subdue 3 of the 10 kings. Now, day 4 comes along. He even gets worse news. Now we're talking about Monday, right? In my scenario, started on Friday, day 1, on through on Monday. Now suddenly he wakes up on the TV. He sees the 2 witnesses resurrect. We're told in Revelation 11, after the 3.5 days, they stand on their feet again. And now he's got a problem. The gift giving is stopping. He's got to go out there and kill these 2 witnesses again. This is a big problem. So he gets in his motorcade. Here's the author of Liberties. He gets in his motorcade with his guns and bullets, and he gets to the scene of the crime. And he's there, and he sees the 2 witnesses ascend to heaven. And he's shooting up there, and the drones are going at it, and whatever the case may be, trying to kill these 2 guys, but he can't kill them. They're going up to heaven. So also now he's got an issue. His Jerusalem trip, 4-day Jerusalem trip's got some sour apples at the end of it here, right? So now he's going to go back and he's put together with his false prophet, he's going to come together, he's going to put together the image of the beast, and he's going to put together his cashless global economy. And now we get into what is that, the cryptocurrencies.
Okay, what is the cryptocurrency? I do want to say this. You write books, you should do some movie things too, because, but looking at it, we do have the facts of everything you're laying out, Revelation 11, 12, and 13. Again, exactly how the events are going to happen. Will drones be involved the second time to attempt to eliminate 2 witnesses? We don't know those things, but certainly you look at what's going on today, somehow these things are going to develop, and that's the reality of what is going to happen. With that, we also know there's going to be a temple that's going to be built in Jerusalem. I don't know if we have enough time to get into that at all. I still want to talk to you more about that if we can't tonight. The temple's going to be built. Antichrist will be demanding to be worshipped. You talked about the abomination of desolation. Then the demand, false prophet says you worship the beast in the image of the beast, or you and receive as the marker, the name of the beast, or you on your right hand or forehead, or you cannot buy or sell. So that is where we're picking up cryptocurrency. Right. Revelation 13. Let's roll.
Okay, let's qualify that a little bit. Okay. In my book, by the way, I have 3 chapters devoted toward the mark of the beast. I introduced the mark of the beast, one of the chapters. The other chapter is the global economy of the Antichrist, and the other economy is the global religion, chapter rather, is the global religion of the Antichrist. So we're going to talk mainly about the global economy of the Antichrist. Now, the mark of the beast is something that's sort of a reward given to those who will actually worship the Antichrist and the image of the beast. You know, it's not going to be something that sneaks up on somebody, some digital chip or whatever, all of a sudden go, I didn't know that was the mark of the beast, right? It's you don't get it, and it's not available till the midpoint of the tribulation.
Okay, so with that, because I get questions all the time, the vaccine that is supposedly being developed, we hear a lot about it. We hear a lot of talk about you won't be able to buy or sell unless you get the vaccine. Is the vaccine the mark of the beast?
No, the vaccine, though, will be probably part of your medical records, which could be incorporated in whatever that technology is the beast
I
uses.
could buy that. I do not believe the vaccine is the mark of the beast. I believe what you said is it's not going to sneak up on you, the mark of the beast. I don't believe you're going to be tricked into receiving the mark of the beast either. You're going to know what you're doing, so it won't be like you received the vaccine and by the way, you just received the mark of the beast. I don't believe it's that way because it's an act of worship,
right?
Isn't it? Okay, with that, do I believe the vaccine is going to be good? That's a different story for a different time with a different guest, right? But let's go back to where you left off.
So we're clear that it's available at the midpoint of the tribulation, not prior, as far as the ability to have the mark of the beast. We're clear that you have to be worshiping the Antichrist to be eligible for the mark of the beast. Okay, it's not going to sneak up on somebody. So we laid that groundwork. Now what we're told is that no one can buy or sell unless they have this mark upon their right hand or upon their forehead. Mm-hmm. So we're not told all the other things about it. We find this out in other chapters that you can experience the wrath of God if you have the mark of beast. You're going to lose your salvation if you have the mark of beast. So we have to start thinking, well, there's more to it than some technology. Mm-hmm. There's actually somebody's forfeiting their right at salvation, et cetera. What happens? Some people are speculating these days that there's some DNA alteration to the human genome where now they're not in the image of God anymore. They're unredeemable. Billy Crone is not on that sort of a thing, et cetera. I'm not going to go there necessarily at this point, but I do want to talk about you won't be able to buy or sell unless you have the mark of the beast. Now, obviously that means cash can't be in the equation because you can't stop someone from buying and selling under the table if there's cash, right? If you're trying to monitor this whole system, you got to get rid of cash. Now, the coronavirus, here's a headline right here, Tom. Is the coronavirus killing off cash? This is Political on April 17th of 2020. Now, folks, the headlines Tom and I are going to go through here with you are all relatively recent. And so what we're talking about here is an Antichrist incorporating a electronic system, probably cryptocurrencies, digital dollars through blockchain technologies. We'll explain that all to you. Now, what does that really mean, though? For the ages, down through the ages, man has fiat currencies, cash, other methods, gold and silver. We're talking about walking away from all that, abandoning all that. It's hard to imagine, and going into a whole new system. Credit cards, debit cards will become really important. We're even talking about going away from that because they have their problems as well, into all the way digital currencies at this point. The coronavirus is helping to kill off cash because the cash can carry it. So that's just one of the headlines. Another headline comes out in Town and Country. Is this the end of cash? With the coming paper currency apocalypse, your money will no longer be good here or there or anywhere. Now, we found that, Tom, at some places you couldn't even pay cash when you made a transaction. They would only take your credit card or your debit card, right? So back to the guy from New Jersey, yeah, it's facilitating the end times right now.
Yeah, I believe it's a tool being used to bring this about because, when you read this, let me share part of this. This comes from Todd Stramberg, and he says this. For years, several central banks have contemplated the introduction of a digital currency. These talks have never gone beyond the theoretical planning stage because it would be a huge move to switch to something that is outside the current banking system. But it's switching now, and I believe coronavirus is being used to help speed this along. The Federal Reserve has been researching the nuts and bolts of a digital currency for some time. The Board of Governors has a technology lab that has been building and testing a range of distributed ledger platforms to understand their potential benefits and trade-offs. Staff members from several reserve banks, including Cleveland Fed software developers, are contributing to this effort. And then the business world has made huge advances in creating technology that makes a 100% digital currency system possible. Then he says a lot more in the newsletter, but that's essentially what you are saying.
Right.
These things have been in the works. I look back before coronavirus, there were companies that would not take cash already, just usually small purchases. I mean, where you might go buy coffee or something like that. Not just were you encouraged to use an app or a debit card or something, but some just wouldn't use it at all, wouldn't accept cash at all. But now with coronavirus, that we really started to see that increase. And in fact, go to a restaurant now, Bill, I'm sure you've experienced it. It's no touch pay. Right? It's just, you can pull up everything right there. They have some kind of thing, or you can pull it up on your phone. You just do the Q reader, and you do everything right there on your phone. You can order on your phone, and you pay you pay on your phone. So these things have really stepped up because of the current environment we're in.
Right, and so just a brief history on this, because it's happening so rapidly. Let's just take ourselves back to the global economic crisis of 2008. That's when the Bitcoin came out. That was sort of the first cryptocurrency.
How long ago?
About 2008.
2008?
Yeah, that's when it was introduced.
That was a long time ago.
Well, remember, that was the global economic crisis.
Yes, that's right.
The mortgage implosion, 2007.
I can't believe that was 12 years. How old am I?
Tom, we don't want to go there, because then you have to
Are
find
you
out,
older than?
then you
You're
find out
older
I'm
than
older
me.
than you.
Okay,
and
let's go.
We don't need to go there. But in 2017, the Bitcoin exploded. It was almost worth $19,700 some dollars, that sort of thing. I think even today it's 13, 14,000, something like that. I don't mark my word on that for a quote. But the point is, Facebook started coming out like in 2019 with what they want to do is the Libra. And then all of a sudden, what happens is, the problem with cryptocurrencies, and we'll read the definition to it in just a minute, is that the central banks are going to lose control of the money. They can't control a Bitcoin, the flow of funds. The central banks of countries are very concerned. They're going to lose control of the flow of the money supply in their own nations. That's why you've got headlines coming out like China rolls out a pilot test of digital currency, the Wall Street Journal, April 20th. USA, UK, France, Russia, Israel, Canada, India, Japan, South Korea, Dubai, Venezuela, Ecuador, Estonia. There's a race. This is just a few of the countries developing cryptocurrencies right now. There's a race, like a race to the moon, to see who can come up with a better Bitcoin nationally. And this stuff is coming head over heels. Another headline here, Visa files for a patent for cryptocurrency system to replace cash. That was in recently, early this year. Cryptocurrency explainers saying it could be the next step in the evolution of money. The International Monetary Fund came out with a video on what is cryptocurrencies. We can't show it here, but let me read what a cryptocurrency is. I have this in my book. Cryptocurrency is a digital currency in which encryption techniques are used to regulate the generation of units of currency and verify the transfer of funds, operating independently of a central bank.
We can pull up that slide so everybody can see it.
Oh, okay.
That's the what is cryptocurrency slide, Chris. Thank you. So there it is. So people can actually read along with you. So go ahead and Bill.
Okay, cryptocurrency is a digital currency in which encryption techniques are used to regulate the generation of units of currency and verify the transfer of funds. Get this, operating independently of a central bank. That's the point. They don't want to lose control of the flow. This means that it is decentralized, which is very problematic for the central banks of countries to control their own nation's money supply. That's why I told you what countries are panicking and going full speed ahead on this sort of thing. Now, the cryptocurrency, here's a couple other headlines that'll tell you about what a blockchain technology is. By the way, Sweden is also testing this as well. Now, here's one for you, blockchain. Headline with the Wall Street Journal, May of 2020. Blockchain may offer solutions to fighting COVID-19. Okay, well, we're going, well, wait a minute. I thought coronavirus was killing cash. Now it's talking about blockchain. What's that? It's fighting. It can be helpful in fighting COVID-19. Okay, well, can you put up the blockchain? What is blockchain thing up there? Okay, just so you know what this is. Blockchain is an electronic monetary system in which a record of transactions made in cryptocurrencies are maintained across several linked computers in a network. In other words, it's not just one main frame, it's throughout the network. It's very accurate, very verifiable. The block represents digital information about a transaction, such as products, participants, dates, location, and dollar amount. The chain is the public database where the block information gets stored. So in other words, folks, it's the new cash register. It's the electronic cash register. And you got digital dollars that need digital wallets. Cryptocurrencies would be like a digital dollar. A blockchain would be like where you do a transaction on a cash register. This is where that's going. But the blockchain can do so much more. Let me tell you what that headline said about the blockchain that could fight COVID-19. The Blockchain Research Institute participated in a virtual roundtable to discuss the potential use of blockchain technologies for public health solutions. The report identified 5 key areas where blockchain could be deployed to fight COVID-19 as well as future pandemics: identity, health records and shared data, just-in-time supply chains, sustaining the economy, a rapid response registry for medical professionals, and incentives to model and to reward responsible behavior. Incentives to model and reward responsible behavior. So it does more than just monitor transactions.
Okay, I got to talk to you about this for just a minute. When you look at the narrative that's out there right now, it is everything with coronavirus is for your safety. It's for the better of everybody globally. No, it is global. This is not localized, which is fascinating to me. The way governments have reacted is pretty much very similar, maybe not all exactly the same, but pretty similar the way everything has come down. The way the mass media has purported everything is pretty similar across the board. There's a narrative, and it is for the safety of everybody else, which is essentially what that article said. And then you also said, you quoted here, in incentives models to reward responsible behavior. That is what the Chinese social credit system did. If you do well in China, it still does. If you speak well of the government in China, I've talked a lot about it here before, the social credit system in China, if you speak well of the Chinese government, there's incentives for you because you'll be blessed by the government. You'll be able to have your kids in certain schools and things like that. Okay, and more incentives. If you speak against the Chinese government, then not only do you not get incentives, you actually get punished. Your kids can't go to school, you can't get a pass to travel on a train, and much worse things than that. So essentially, that's what this is saying. Incentives models to reward responsible behavior. So you're looking at this. This is just fascinating to me when you look at blockchain, cryptocurrency. I still don't understand how it all works. I may never understand how this works. The tech part of it is honestly, it's beyond me. But I do know what the Bible says about the direction everything has to go. So there's all these other countries involved in this. You read the different countries that are involved in this or pursuing it, and I'm sure it's got to be, Bill. When I look at it, whoever develops the best system can rule the world. Am I thinking right?
Ultimately, this is going to be put in place individually within countries and ultimately globally prior to the Antichrist and the false prophet implementing the system, because they're not going to come on the midpoint of the tribulation and say, what could we do now to have a cashless economy? They're going to just take what's existing and they're going to put it into their coffer, and if it's not already in that case. And I'm going to show you a headline because he comes out of the revived Roman Empire. I'll show you some headlines on that in just a minute. I want to read a couple more quick headlines to show people how real this really is and how rapidly it's coming right at them like a freight train. PayPal reveals that it's developing cryptocurrencies, July of 2020. MasterCard and Visa are making bold moves toward mass crypto adoption. Okay? Why every person on the planet will need a digital ID. Whoa, what's with that all about? That's what we're talking about here, monitoring people. The Antichrist is going to be able to monitor people's behavior, consumer behavior. He's going to be able to have all their records in their blockchain files, etc. So the organization that I run, and I'm getting a quote here from ID 2020, we've talked about this here before, is the leading alliance of large private sector companies, small startups, UN agencies, NGOs, non-government organizations, and by 2030, our goal is to enable access to digital identity for every person on the planet. This is where this goes. It incorporates itself with the vaccine, the digital IDs, the whole thing like this can all be coming together so that they can put together a digital ID for everybody. A lot of people on the planet, especially in the poverty-stricken areas, and that's who they're mainly appealing with here, the ID 2020, they have no access to public health, education. They have no ID, identifications per se, this sort of thing. So it starts with them. Let's make this a better place for them. But ultimately, it goes, we want everyone on the planet to have a digital ID.
So what's the goal, the date, would you say 20 what?
2030.
2030. So Agenda 2030 is what the UN has also to bring the whole world into compliance. Okay, so I want to say this before we continue. Here it is. It is, what month are we in? We're in October. Today is October 11th of 2020. So with that, I want to talk to everybody watching out there just for a minute. Okay, you hear these things that Bill and I are discussing this afternoon, this evening. And I just consider this, because there's a lot of naysayers out there. They're saying every time you see something come about and you say, well, see how this points to Bible prophecy, the fulfillment of what is coming during the tribulation period. If let's say by next summer, all of a sudden we see cryptocurrency or blockchain, this digital money come about, cashless society, if you're skeptical on Bible prophecies, will you start to believe them? Because the Bible says this is going to happen. Here's something else I want to mention too. Bible prophecies like this, we know they're going to be fulfilled because the Bible says they're going to be fulfilled. But they're going to be fulfilled. They aren't going to have their fulfillment until the tribulation period. And that's a mistake I think a lot of prophecy, just people who read Bible prophecy make. They think that Bible prophecy points to the rapture of the church. Bible prophecy doesn't point to the rapture of the church. Bible prophecy points to the second coming of Christ. The rapture of the church happens first. The second coming of Christ is at the end of the tribulation period when Jesus comes again. Bill, I would liken it to this. We see Christmas decorations come out October. We're seeing them, right? But we know with the Christmas decorations, we know they point to Christmas, but we know Thanksgiving's coming first. Same way, we know the rapture's coming first, but the prophecies have their fulfillment in the tribulation period. So when we're reading these things, I'm thinking, Jesus said, when you see these things begin to take place, look up, your redemption draws near. Bill, this is just absolutely fascinating to me because the direction of the world governments, banks, is all going this direction.
That was well said. And I'm going to take just a few more headlines, then I want to take a moment to sort of summarize what this all means.
Okay.
And get into the pros and cons of the mark of the beast. So people are actually going to be having to consider the pros and cons of the mark of the beast at that lethal time at the midpoint of the tribulation. So I want to talk about those two in a minute. Now, it says here, the question will arise over time, the ethical aspects of this sort of thing with digital IDs and stuff like that. Here's a headline: will blockchain technology be used to build an evil social credit system? Right now, ultimately, it will be. We know with the Antichrist, if that's the technology he embraces, and it sure looks like that's where this is going. But it talks about, as much as I believe that blockchain technology has the potential to solve many of the problems humanity faces, I also fear that what can happen to blockchain technology is used to take away the privacy and rights of the individuals. And there's more to be said about that. Right now, the Bank of Canada, headline in the Financial Post in October 2019, the Bank of Canada exploring digital currency that would replace cash, track how people spend their money. And just a subtitle here, an internal Bank of Canada presentation says benefits of digital currency include the sharing of personal information with police or tax authorities. Okay, so see all the ramifications about this. First of all, they're going to get through the ethical arguments. They're going to use it for tracking, for reporting to tax authorities and this sort of thing. Ultimately, if the Antichrist doesn't like you or what's your consumer habits or whatever the case, he can shut you down as quick as he can bring you up. Right? In other words, so that's the control you'll have over an electronic system. Now, just maybe one or two more real quickly, because this is going to have to go into an EU, a European Union kind of scenario, right? Here's a headline that says, Germany is considering the advantages of launching a digital euro. Okay, now so we see it's over there in Europe right now. The digital euros are coming over there. So the systems will be in place. The Antichrist and the false prophet will embrace them, and they'll be able to monitor everybody. God searches the hearts and minds to see what our thoughts are. Okay, where we're at. The Antichrist can't do that, but he'll be able to track everybody's footsteps, know all their consumer habits, have all their medical records, know everything about them. And this type of technology that you're seeing developing in the world right now at a God speed pace, for lack of a better word, a turbo pace.
Yeah. So I see these things rapidly going that way. I do have to have this disclaimer here, and that is that in decades past, people said Social Security number was the mark of the beast, credit cards mark of the beast, ATM cards mark of the beast, the RFID chip is the mark of the beast. Now a virus, the vaccine, thank you very much, is the mark of the beast. So, I mean, those things were the mark of the beast. Cryptocurrency, not the mark of the beast, but the technology being used to make it where no one can buy or sell. Look, I look at it, my best guess is yes, this is it, but I want to be careful not to hang my hat on it, because who knows? What if something else happens to pop up in the next couple of years that's even beyond this? I don't see how, but you know,
that's well said.
Yeah.
Because you're right. Hal Lindsey thought it might have been credit cards and debit cards back in the 70s, right? And that sort of thing, right?
Right.
So we are just telling you what's developing in the world right now, and how it could actually be indicators that we are that deep into the end times. This is a type of system that could be employed quickly once it's almost developed by the Antichrist to accomplish and fulfill that no one can buy or sell unless they take the mark of the beast. So I agree with you.
Yeah. Okay, we're running out of time. You have some things you want to share. We have exactly 9 minutes left.
Okay.
Do you think you can do this in 9 minutes?
Yeah, I want to talk about the pros and cons of the mark of the beast.
Okay.
Okay. People are going, well, we all know the cons. Believers know all the cons. You don't do that, you can lose your salvation, etc. Well, listen. Remember, at the time the mark of the beast is, people are worshiping the Antichrist. You know, there's supernatural deception going on. He's probably done a miracle in the temple, showed himself as God. You know, there's going to be people who are, want to take that mark of the beast because they're deceived, and they're going to want to be part of his system. I mean, people want to buy and sell, feed their family, etc. I understand that, but it's more than that. The pros: one, you won't get beheaded, because if you don't take the mark of the beast, we're told that Christians who don't take the mark of the beast will be beheaded. Two, you become a worshiper of the Antichrist, sort of a bona fide, acknowledged worshiper of the Antichrist. Now, some people like that prestige. So, for instance, I'll use an example. A Catholic is born, he goes, I was born a Catholic. I'll always be a Catholic. I'll die a Catholic. Some people like the prestige of that sort of thing. You can buy as a consumer, or you can sell as a merchant. Okay, you're going to have to, if you're going to be trying to operate a business or be able to survive your family, you're going to have this mark of the beast to even do that.
Right. Well, can I cut in here for just a second? We see this developing right now, the fear thought already. Right now with coronavirus, when we hear about the possibility of in the future, you aren't going to be able to enter into a restaurant unless you have a vaccine. So the narrative's there. The fear factor is already there. So when people think, I will never fall for the mark of the beast, well, people are already going along with this. So there's a preparation taking place. I just wanted to state that. Now we can move on.
Right. So there are advantages and pros and necessities as well. You won't even be able to buy or sell without
I
it.
I flew the other day to Nebraska and then came back home. And so you won't be able to do that unless you receive the mark of the beast. You start to realize, well, maybe it's not so bad.
Right.
And there's going to be
well,
tough.
and the other one too is you'll obtain a personal world citizen digital ID, if what we're talking about is the method, that connects you to all the global services such as universal health care, universal basic income, global banking, world travel, like you said, public education, and more. Now, I think on the flip side, there will be people saying, well, what are the cons? Some people are going to be reasonably wondering, what if I don't take this?
Yeah, right.
Because there's some people over there that aren't taking it, namely Christians. There's warning. There's some serious eternal cons and adverse situations with this. Okay, one, first of all, your benefits will only last 3.5 years, because the Antichrist's system is going to be done when Jesus Christ returns in his second coming. So it's going to be very short-lived. You'll receive loathsome body sores. The first bowl judgment that happens, it's been reserved. The bowl judgments are reserved for the second half of the tribulation. The very first one is loathsome sores afflict everyone who takes the mark of the beast.
Yeah, for everyone who takes the mark of the beast, these are the cons.
That's right. So you will get loathsome sores. It'll be short-lived, 3.5 years. You will drink of the wine of God's wrath. You will lose your shot at salvation. You will watch the Antichrist, your hero, get cast into the lake of fire when Jesus Christ comes in the second coming. You'll be judged at the white throne judgment, which is not a place you want to be judged at. Everyone there presents our arguments. Why the books are open, and the question is, how were you with Jesus Christ? And they all fail because they didn't receive Jesus Christ. They all get cast in the lake of fire, which is the other thing at the end of the millennium, the other con. Those are very severe cons. I like to put those out forward right now because I believe we're getting very close to the tribulation period. We, as believers in the church age, won't be going through this sort of thing. But you know, people could be going through this that we know, that could be watching this right now. This stuff could be within the next 10 years, folks. We don't know how soon till Jesus is going to come get us. There's probably a slight gap between the rapture and the tribulation, maybe a few months, maybe a few years, because it's not the rapture that starts the tribulation. It's a confirmation of a false covenant. We're told in Daniel 9:27 and in Isaiah 28, verses 15 through 18. And then the tribulation starts, and the tribulation is clearly just a 7-year period, broken in half, 1,260 days, 3.5 years, 42 months. Midpoint we've been talking about today, all kinds of things going on in the midpoint, and all kinds of things going on in the second half. So in my book, I get into the midpoint, this last book, the midpoint and the last prophecies and the final prophecies book.
That's this book, The Final Prophecies. Right. And people can get that on your website, prophecydepotministries.com.
Prophecy Depot, well, yeah, or they can just go prophecydepot.com.
Prophecydepot.com, okay.
It's links to the prophecydepotministries.net, yeah.
Okay, so with that, Bill, I have a question that came in. We have enough time to answer this last question. It is this. Do you feel that this virus has drawn more people to Christ, or to be concerned as what is going on in the world, which was somewhat normal? So it appears that is from someone named Eddie. The first part of the question, I understand. You think it's drawn more people to Christ. Second part of the question, I'm not sure I understand it. It sounds like he's asking, are more people concerned with what is going on, which would lead them to want to know Bible prophecy. What are your thoughts?
Well, unfortunately, I don't know the stats,
Yeah.
pre-research on if this is prompting more people to go toward Christ.
Okay.
But I will say this, okay, ask anyone yourself and ask anyone you talk to, in light of what's going on right now, there's 3 questions. Do you think things are going to get better? Now, I ask people this question all the time. Or do you think things are going to get worse before they get better? Or do you think things are just going to get worse? Okay. Now, you're going to find that most people are paying attention to what's going on. They're going to say, I think things are going to get worse. Or some people will say, I think they're going to get worse before they get better. But you're going to find very few people that think things are going to get better. So my point is, I think that you can take this information we're giving you today, put it together with the current events that are going on, and we haven't even talked about Middle East things and stuff, because that's all stuff that can also happen biblically, even while the church is here, things with Israel, some of those things. And realize that people are very concerned right now. You can kind of reach out to them with that kind of question. Are you concerned? Yes, things are getting worse, okay? Reach out to them and then lead them toward the Lord. Take this information, point them to these shows, to these books, etc., to Hope for Today Ministries, and evangelize right now, people, because clearly if you're seeing all this stuff coming at you this quickly, like Tom said, the Christmas ornaments are out, well, the rapture is going to happen real soon, and people you know and love are going to get left behind if they don't accept Jesus right now, and you do not want them to go through any of this stuff. You do not want them to even have an opportunity to know the pros and cons about the mark of the beast, and they will be deceived because supernatural deception will be running rampant, and Satan will be unrestrained. He'll be running around like a roaring lion seeking who he can devour without any restraint. That, in my estimation, is coming real soon, folks.
Yeah. You think now, if people think it's tough now, think about when the restrainers are removed, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. But with that, Bill, as a final thing, I just want to remind all of our viewers, think of this, the signs and these things that we are talking about with this time together with Bill, the mark of the beast and receiving the mark of the beast, not being able to buy or sell, and then the midpoint tribulation prophecies. Those are signs that the Bible warns us about. We keep our eyes on the finish line, right? We know these things are going to happen, so we aren't knocked off step. You keep your eyes towards the finish line. Jesus is coming. Remember, we may live in the best of times or the worst of times, but at the same time, we know how it ends, doesn't it? God wins, and if you're on God's side, through the Lord Jesus Christ, you can know that you will win. Listen, Bill, thank you very much for coming out. This has been great.
Yes, and we want to say, but get on God's side now.
Yeah. Yes, you want to come to God's side now. Ask Christ to forgive you of your sins. Repent. That means to make a U-turn, surrender to the Lord Jesus Christ. In fact, you can even email me through hopeforOurTimes.com, and we'd love to send a Bible to you and talk with you about salvation too. That would be absolutely wonderful, because that is why we talk about these things. Yeah. And with that, Bill, thank you. I can't wait till next time. I still want to talk about the temple that's coming in Jerusalem. For 2 years, we've been saying, we're going to talk about that on our program. We haven't done it yet. Maybe
I've got
next
lots
time.
to say about that.
Okay, I'll tell you what, next time I'm going to have you back, and that's what we're going to talk about. Thank you very much. God bless you, everybody, and thank you for joining us. And if we're not raptured, see you next week.